Hello and welcome to this video. My name is Miriam and I love everything about books. In 2021 I'm doing this challenge where I try to read 365 books in a year, and every week I post a weekly wrap-up video with all the books I read. And the past week I managed to read 8 books and I'm very happy about that, because that means I'm definitely back on track with my reading goal for this year. And I feel so happy about that. In last week's weekly wrap-up video I told you a bit more about the books I read, and I really like that myself. I like to share a bit more about the books and not just I like this book. So I will continue doing that and I hope you enjoy it too. This video will probably be shorter than last week's video because then I read 12 books and that was a lot, and I don't think I will ever manage to do that again, but you never know. Without further ado, let's just dive into the books that I read in the past week, because 8 is still quite a lot of books. I read a lot of ebooks, only one physical copy, so I'll be showing you a lot of the books on my phone and not the physical copy. Oh, I forgot to tell you, if you're new to my videos, the weekly wrap-up video is about the books I read between Saturday and a Friday. So this week's weekly wrap-up video is about the books I read from Saturday the 27th of February until Friday the 5th of March. The first book I finished is the Dutch book Uitrollen is a nieuwe doorpakken, and I'm not even going to try to translate this title because it's impossible. It's about the language people use when they are in the office. They have these strange phrases and stuff, and everyone seems to understand what they mean, and some of these phrases are so weird that why do we use them? Now, I quite dislike using sentences like that, and so does the author of the book, so there was a lot of recognition, but on the other hand sometimes it felt a bit repetitive, and she's written more books on this topic and I'm not sure if I'm going to read them all because I was quite fed up with it after this book. The next book I finished was Tying the Knot by Susan Mayward. It is a feel-good book, but it had quite a heavy theme. It is about Anne. She's a nurse and she has been shot when she was on duty, and she has recovered and now she has graduated, but she's going to be a nurse in Deep Haven, a small town in Minnesota. She hopes she gets an easy life over there. She meets a man called Noah and he looks a bit like a gangster, but he isn't. He's actually a youth pastor. She doesn't know that at the start of the book, but he's a youth pastor who organizes a camp weekend for children who live in the same neighborhood where Anne was shot. And he needs a nurse to be able to do this camp, to get like money and stuff. So he needs a nurse to make it official, and he asks Anne, and she thinks that just church children are going to show up, but it's a bit different. Obviously misunderstandings follow, and also some other things that aren't really great, and there was definitely a heavy theme in this book, but all in all I enjoyed this book, and it was great to see that Anne slowly started to heal from not just the physical damage that was done when she was shot, but also the mental damage. She gets better at that. After that I read The Perfect Match, which is also a book that takes place in Deep Haven, also written by Susan Mayward, and this was about Pastor Dan and the new chief or interim chief at the fire department of Deep Haven, Ellie. I can't remember her last name, but I can't remember Dan's last name either. I really enjoyed this book, although sometimes women were a bit like Ellie is the fire chief, and there were some very old-fashioned people in this book who thought that she shouldn't be at the fire department, that it wasn't a woman's job, and obviously Susan Mayward doesn't share that opinion. But sometimes it felt a bit like she was proving too much that Ellie could do this, and then in the end Ellie actually quit her job, and I'm not sure what I thought of that, but I like the storyline of Dan and Ellie when they grew together, and Well, I just liked the idea that the pastor was single and he was dating someone from his church, and that all the people in church were like, what is happening, and all of them were meddling with them, and that was something I thought was quite funny. The next book I finished was another Dutch original written by Terlouw. It's called Het hebzuchtgas, and I think its title can be translated as the greed gas. And it is a modern fairy tale about, I think also about climate change and that sort of things, but it was written in a very funny way. It's about rich people that are exploiting the earth for the sake of money, and there are some teenagers who want to put an end to it because the level of the sea is rising, and they got floodings, and they think, well, this is not a good idea, we should try to turn it around. Then someone tells one of the main characters of the book a story that the higher buildings that people live in, the walls have a sort of gas that comes out of them, and that makes the people very greedy. So there is actually a way out of it, and they are going to try that on someone. And it was an hilarious book, but it also had like a very important truth in it. That was actually the last book I read in February. I read 28 books in February, and in March I wanted to, well, make a sort of head start. So I read 3 books by Denise Hunter, the first thing in March. They read quite easily and I like the storylines. So I started out with Surrender Bay. This is about Landon and, oh, I can't remember the other name of the main character. But they both were best friends, and then I really need to know her name. Sam. Something happens and Samantha moves away from the island because they live on an island and they have been best friends all their lives. And then she moves away, and then her stepfather dies, so she has to return to the island. And then she also returns to her best friend, and he wants to know what happens, and then he finds out she has a daughter because he brought her daughter with him, and there's a story to that. I thought this was a bit slowly, the storyline evolved a bit slowly, and I did not think this was the best book I read by Denise Hunter, but I think it was great that having secrets usually never works. You have to be open to one another. And I thought, because it's the Nantucket series, I thought the next book would also be about those characters, or not about those characters, but about characters that were in the book but like a friend to one of the main characters. But the next book in the series was about entirely different characters. It was The Convenient Groom, and that was fake dating to the next level. The main character, she's called Kate. Well, she wrote a book about finding your true love, and then it was released on her wedding day, but 5 hours before she got married, the groom said, no thanks, I've fallen in love with someone else. And then she's like, well, my book launch can't, because the book launch and the wedding would be at the same time. So then, actually, because they've made it a secret who true love was, there's this store owner, and he has a crush on Kate actually, and he hears her when, well, she gets left, he's with her when she gets the phone call that her fiancé doesn't want to go through with the wedding. So he says, I want to step in. And then they get married and things happen, and obviously the truth comes out, but I thought it was a funny story, and it also had some deeper things in it. I did not agree with all the thoughts on the true love bit, but what do I know about that? But it was a funny, light-hearted story, and I really enjoyed it. The next book in the Nantucket series, I believe in the English one it's the 4th book, but not all of those books have been translated into Dutch. So I read Driftwood Lane, and I already expected that it wouldn't be about characters I met in the other books, but it takes place on the island again. This is about a woman called, I forget the names of these people I read about. Meredith. well, her father dies and his wife, so that's like sort of her stepmom, and together they had 3 children who are much younger than Meredith. And then she is appointed guardian of the children, and there is also an uncle for the children who is the brother of the stepmom of Meredith, but he doesn't show up. At least that's what she thinks. So she tries to look after the children, she tries to be the best guardian she can be, and things happen, and obviously the uncle returns, but he doesn't want her to know that he has returned because he wants to be their guardian, and he thinks that she has a mental illness, so he is trying to expose her, but well, the thing happens, they fall in love, and things happen. This story was, sometimes the pacing was a bit off, but I still enjoyed it, but I was also glad that I finished the book, because at some point you get a bit sick of all the feel-good stories, and I read a lot of feel-good stories in the past week, as you might have noticed, and I was ready for something a bit deeper. So that's when I did another reread of the book Gegijzeld, which is also a Dutch original, Evert Hartman. I talked about this book in my wishlist video, I believe, but the title can be translated as Taken Hostage, and in this book starts with a boy called Gerard, and he has maths tutoring because he's bad at it, and I totally understand that. And suddenly 2 armed men storm into the school that is completely empty and taken them hostage. And this book was written in 1984, so probably what happens in a book cannot happen in 2021, but I still believe that this story is very powerful. Well, at first they obviously they are very scared, and the demands of the people who've taken them hostage are, well, they're not met, and at some point one of the guys starts telling them his story, and that's actually a story in a story. So the story of the hostage thing is written in the present tense actually, and then at this stage this is called the story of Leon, so one of the guys who is armed and has taken them hostage, and his story is really long, and it's about a country, it's not named, but it's a communist country, and obviously it is a bit of a Stockholm syndrome thing, but they started to feel sympathy for the people who've taken them hostage, and I do too. So if it's Stockholm syndrome, I got Stockholm syndrome for a fictional character. The reason I like this book so much is that I read it in high school, and it was one of the first books that dealt with an issue that was it was about injustice, and I think it was the first book I read, and when I realized that I'm so lucky to live in the country where I live, to be born where I was born, and I think that's why this story, I can read this story again and again, and now I do have my own physical copy of this book, and I'm so happy with that. I will tell you a bit more about that in Thursday's video, because that will be a book haul video, so I will tell you how I finally got this book. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please let me know in a comment, how is your reading challenge coming along? Are you on track? Are you ahead? Are you behind? Whatever it is, keep on reading. You can do it. I believe in you. And as always, happy reading.